Warning, the following video has flashing lights and also includes content that may be deemed inappropriate for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The Cryptid, Huntress, Jessica Jones. I see, once again, you have found your way into the darkness of the Fox Den for this episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on Starfox Radio. There is no need to fear the darkness. The darkness is my friend, and I enjoy it. Much better. Absolutely delicious. I am still very hungry. Yet, Jessica Jones, the Cryptid Huntress, and myself, Starfox, have many things we need to attend to, so feeding will have to be put onto the back burner. Without further ado, let's get ready to take a walk into the darkness known as the Dogman phenomenon.
Stood up. I said, oh my god, it's a werewolf, and everybody in the car freaked out.
My creatures of the night, once again, it is time for Midnight Lycanthropy here on Starfox Radio. You have found your way around the late night fire to burn some timber as we once again read a few chapters from the Midnight Society book. Oh, wait a second. You hear that? Yes, the Cryptid Huntress, aka Jessica Jones, has made her way through the dense and foggy forest to join us around the fire tonight. How you been, Jessica?
Oh, it's been a long trek, but I'm here. Good.
this
I'm doing
is
great.
excellent.
Yeah, it's good to see. Good to see you.
Appreciate you,
Good to
my
hear you.
friend. I know, long time no talk. Glad to get back on schedule here and cranking. How you been?
I've been so busy. I've been just going dogman hunting, Bigfoot hunting, you name it. I've been in the woods the past 2 weeks now, on and off. Since the last time I talked to you, I've spent a lot of time in the woods with different teams, including Drewski, one of our friends to the Midnight Society. Drewski with Cryptid Warfare Operators. That's one of my teams. And we were up in North Georgia with the team doing some cryptid hunting this past week. So, staying active, staying busy, stalking cryptids.
That is excellent. You're always staying busy, and you're going to get a chuckle from this. It was a few weeks back, and I don't know if Drewski sent it to me or I sent it to him, but there is apparently a massive wild boar issue in certain areas, and these people were on these like military decked out things with, like, I don't even know how to describe these guns because I don't know the most, but it looked like a gun that spun around that should be on like a tank or something, and they all had like assault rifles. And every time I happen to see that pop up, I always think of Drewski because he's also sending me like images when he's always doing his custom weapons and stuff, and I'm just like, yo, dude's like decked out. So I just thought that was pretty gnarly because apparently, like I said, there is that problem down there with the boars. But yeah, he said that will do the trick, eh?
Yeah, that sounds about like how we roll actually when we're out there doing some of the more dangerous work For sure. And you got to stay strapped when you're looking for Hogzilla out in those woods. I mean, we're all over the place. We were up in North Georgia this past week. We did the hunt before that was in Alabama. We've been in Tennessee. We got a Kentucky trip planned at some point, and we're trying to hit up all the states with all the big cryptid issues and problems up there. So, yeah, he's definitely a weapons expert. So are all the guys on the team. Everybody, we're all pretty well trained, and we come fully stocked as far as the protection goes when we go on hunts.
That is beautiful and super important. And it just is a very good thing for sure. Even though this is a little bit off topic, it's not, because Hogzilla, when you mentioned it, man, I've seen some crazy sized boars, and that's, for something else that, we can dive into some other time on your show or something. But yeah, like whether it's domesticated or not, those things are absolutely enormous. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, that's the last thing you want creeping up on you in the woods, for sure. We actually got surrounded by a bunch of coyotes when we were up in the mountains, and we watched as they came in, and I kept my eyes on them through the thermal for most of the night. We had like three came in towards us, and then five. We kind of kept our eyes on it, but as soon as we saw those lights light up in the thermal, uh, everybody everybody let's just say took interest in it, and watched, just to keep them away. I'm not saying anybody's gonna shoot, okay? I'm not saying anything like that, but we were ready because there were a whole bunch. We could hear a whole bunch of them all around us that night, which I guess is actually kind of good. If you're hearing coyotes and you're hearing the wildlife out there, it means that there's no bigger predators around usually. It's when everything goes silent and there are no coyotes around that you really got to worry around your base camp.
This is very true. Preach, my friend. And or we can dive into that now, it's really up to you. Did you want to hear about two things that are, in my eyes, pretty intriguing, or would you like to roll first and hear that after?
No, let's hear it. I want to hear what you got.
All right. So I don't know if you've seen this video, and I can try to find it for you. It's very bizarre because a full-grown elk, and they're really deep out in the forest, was running fast enough from something. I mean, I guess it could have been maybe going after a female. I don't know herbivores' behaviors the best. As stated, I really try to focus a lot on prehistoric and modern day predator behaviors. So I don't know, I guess, if this elk really wanted to mate that bad, it would have been running around 40 miles per hour. If anyone out there knows that, that would be amazing. Yet, either way, it was at that pace for some reason and decided it could fit through this tree, or these two trees. Yet, unfortunately for its horns, could not. And it literally destroyed itself. But yeah, it's in the middle of nowhere, and they're up on it looking at it, just like, what the heck? This is bizarre. And it's a hunting channel, so this guy's a tracker and such. And he said he'd never seen anything like that before. And it made me think for a second on a couple different levels. One, all right, let's say it was running from something. If it was any predator or anything, outside of the norm, like maybe a Sasquatch or a Dogman, why didn't it come up and then take that elk? Did it then catch another one, and this one had gotten farther enough away? And also, it did look fairly new, but it had no signs of predation. So did they just happen to literally walk up on this area as this had just occurred, or what? It's just bizarre because any predator that was chasing that, I feel like, would have known that it ran itself into the trees and got it, unless it went after something else. I don't know. I just wanted to hear your opinion on that first before I said something else.
Wow, that's pretty wild. I mean, my first question would be, well, was it at nighttime? Was this thing running and it just didn't see the tree right there and it ran in between it? I mean, that would be the most reasonable kind of
Okay.
explanation for it, I think, but I don't know. I mean, I would think that any kind of animal like that would be able to see pretty well at night. So
You
yeah,
would
it's
think,
probably,
right?
you think? Yeah, I mean, must have been running for its life, unless unless you just didn't see it, see the tree, and it sounds like its head about got decapitated. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, it's so bizarre. And after we do finish this, if you do remember, ask me to send you that so you can just check it out. It's just really bizarre because, like I said, no matter what, even if a bear was chasing this or something, the only logical reason would be that bear then maybe got the female that was with that male instead or something, but it still doesn't make sense why this thing was just there. I don't know. I just feel like any predator that was chasing that would have been like, yo, that's dope. The thing just destroyed itself. Dinner time, right?
Yeah. So it wasn't eaten, or
No,
it,
it looks very fresh still. Like I said, I mean, it didn't see any sort of signs of predation at all, which is interesting as to why, potentially had it just occurred, or did it happen where, like you said, at previous night or something, but it was looked fairly fresh though, which is super interesting. So I don't know. Like I said, I don't really know the most about herbivore behaviorisms, but it only seems logical, like you said, that it had to be potentially running from something. And if you want to touch on that again, I'm going to try to find that video and send it to you so that way you can actually check in it on live and even give your own thoughts, because it literally is so dang bizarre. It's cool, but it's frigged up. Like, why?
it is bizarre. I mean, the only thing I can really think of would be that it was just dark, and it ran between the tree and it got stuck. That's all I could think of. It was running from something. But if it was a predator and it was something that was hungry, that was chasing after it, it would have eaten it. Okay, it would have taken that opportunity to eat it. That's what big cats would have done. That's what, anything that's running after something at night, it's there to eat it. Okay, I mean, that's what I would think. But who knows at this point? I don't know.
Wow, I did
I'd
find it,
have to.
Miss Jessica.
You did, okay?
Yes. Would you like me to text it to you?
Sure.
Yes, check this out while we're speaking, because it's just
Okay.
interesting. Because even though, like I said, we speak about Dogman and stuff, this definitely has something to do with a predator. And obviously, that's a big elk. I mean, yeah, it is up in Canada, so it's not surprising. I mean, I know there's big grizzly bears, and there's rumors that there are Siberian tigers up around there. So yes,
Oh.
there are large predators that could take down that elk. But I don't
Oh,
know.
that poor thing, man.
I'm just baffled. I'm just baffled as to, like you said, I mean, what the like that's a small hole. Like I don't even know. It seems like it must have been so dang afraid to even try to make it through that hole. I don't know. I'm not a biologist and such, so I really can't understand this more than what we're speaking about. But it looks fresh as heck. I mean, there is no sign of predation on it and such. And I mean, like I said, these guys are saying it had to be going around 40 miles per hour and just stopped it cold. And boom, what the heck?
Hmm.
Why is there nothing around? And I mean, that looks pretty broad daylight. So even if it was at the night, that still had to be sitting there for a decent amount of time to not have predators around, right? And
Yeah.
people say in cryptid type encounters or things that cryptids are going to take or mess or have touched or something, no other predators go near it. And I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Did these guys literally walk into an area where this cryptid's still around and waiting for this, or what the heck?
Well, if it was being chased by a cryptid, that cryptid would have eaten it. If it was a Bigfoot, a Gugway, a Dogman, that thing would have been eaten, and it doesn't have a scratch on it. From watching this video, it looks like it. So it's on a slant going downhill. It looks as though, I mean, it could have fallen.
Yes.
Definitely, it could have. There's also a broken stick inside
So it
the
could
the
have
Z
tripped. Okay.
formation. So it could have just been running, and it could have been chasing something. It could have been, trying to chase another buck or whatever these things are, whatever this thing I'm looking at. It could have been
That's what
chasing
I was
something
thinking
else.
too.
There's
Yes.
no
Yeah.
telling. I mean, the possibilities are really endless. It could have been anything, but it is, if something were chasing it like another predator, because that's a huge animal right there.
They gotta
If
eat that, right? That's a waste of
it would
everything.
have eaten it. Yeah, something would have eaten it. Yeah. So that looks just like an accident to me. It looks like a pure accident. That's my opinion.
All right, that would make sense because, like I said, there's no sign of predation, but it's just that is one of the most bizarre things I had ever seen in my life.
Hey, it's shed hunt. What do they call them? Shed hunters. Those guys that go around looking for antlers and stuff. That they would have loved that. I'm sure. I don't know who found this guy, but man, that would have made something fantastic to go on somebody's wall. I'm just saying, like a mount.
Right?
Yeah.
And to the
Yeah.
audience that does want to see that, it's pretty easy to find. All you got to do is type in elk running 40 miles per hour, and basically, yes, as Jessica said, destroying itself in between the trees. So, I
Yeah.
mean, it's humorous, but it's
Right.
unfortunate, but it's just straight up freaking bizarre. I mean, yeah, nature happens. So, I mean, I don't see why, if chimpanzees fall out of trees, which they are at least once in their lifetime, chimpanzees have a traumatic fall. I really don't see why that thing, like you said, could have tripped, and stumbled and just, well, that time you really freaked yourself up.
Right. I feel sorry for the poor guy. Obviously he must have broken his neck or something.
Dude, I mean, it's not funny, but yeah.
Yeah, they run
Jesus
really
Christ.
fast though, because I'm seeing another video too of some that are running. They run real fast. So he probably just ran so fast he got jammed in there. He broke his
Dude,
neck
oh
probably from the
man,
crack. Yeah,
brutal
that's rough.
stuff. But this
I know.
next one right here,
Nature's gnarly, man. Nature is so gnarly.
yes, yes, this is gonna blow your mind even more, though, friends. All right, and it dives into what my science team and myself have really been saying, and I think this is, I want to say, groundbreaking in regards of proving that, well, we really need to look at the hyena as being something that is very involved in this whole Dogman thing, and also the prehistoric cave hyena is still existing and such. Because, all right, little do most people know, the names of certain hyenas, especially the giant ones, when broken down, usually translate into something along the lines of consuming our ancestors, having something to do with whether it was Homo erectus, etc. It ties into that hyenas were consuming us, and they have a ton of evidence supporting that, which is why they named them after this, which is scary as heck. Okay, so pretty much through the beginning of times, our ancestors have always been dealing with hyenas, whether it was Neanderthals, Denisovians, Homo erectus, Homo sapiens, doesn't matter. And it's pretty terrifying because, well, hyenas in general are extremely large and they are dominated by females, which people don't usually realize. It's not run by an alpha male, it's alpha females. And you have one big, gnarly one that runs the whole thing. Males are low on the totem pole. They get to spare pickings, everything, and they're usually the ones that are the unhealthiest and ran down teeth, etc. All right, so cave hyenas live in caves and loved it. Spent around pretty much the same amount of time as cave bears did. 80% of their existence would be in these caves. And, well, they didn't go extinct too long ago. And you have the ringed docus in the late 1800s that, even if it was horrible taxidermy, it still doesn't look like any sort of canine or anything, but unfortunately they weren't too intellectual about it and decided to stuff it before taking any sort of evidence, and the chemicals they put on it obviously ruined everything, so there's no way to ever get DNA from it. But it looks a lot like a cave hyena or some sort of hyena, and also potentially a dire wolf. And when you look at hyena's teeth in the back, they're different than canines. They have these really large, huge teeth on the back. And recently there was an animal that was found on a running trail that had its head kind of flattened, but it had extremely large molars in the back that didn't look canine-ish. And we think it had something to do with hyenas. Interesting. But cave hyenas, like I said, definitely like to num on people as well. Okay. Last time I checked, right, there are not supposed to be any sort of hyenas that feed on people in Saudi Arabia. Okay. Spotted hyenas and pack oriented hyenas are the ones that would be consuming humans. Striped hyenas and other versions are considered to be, well, scavengers. Okay. Recently in Saudi Arabia, yes, in the Jersan lava tube. Wow, I actually got that remotely. Okay. The Smithsonian, by mistake, found a huge, massive collection of bones that mostly were humans that have been stalked there for the past 7,000 years by hyenas. Wait a second. Again, okay, cave systems. Like I was saying the other day in your video about there's really no reason why they couldn't travel from Africa up there. Interesting. So we now know there are or were recently or still potentially have hyena activity in Saudi Arabia. We know they consumed our ancestors. We know to this day, spotted hyenas still love attacking and consuming people. And once again, here's those cave systems, missing people, cave systems. Interesting stuff. Just figured I wanted to hear your opinion before we dive into some of the crazy stuff you got to say too, my friend.
Oh, yeah. Well, it sounds like they have similar habitats in Africa with their hyenas as we could have potentially here in the United States. And, I've talked about hyenas in the Appalachian Mountains. I had Mr. E from Cryptids of the Corn podcast, who is a field researcher, came on my show a while back, probably a year ago. We talked about the Appalachian hyenas and the prevalence of hyena sightings in North America, and potentially how they got here. Apparently they used to be pretty prevalent around here for a while, and some would suggest that it's because they came over with royalty and people that had little menageries of zoos and like exotic animals from far countries far away and from Africa, I guess. Like the Egyptians would bring them over, and we do have ancient Egyptian settlements here, hidden, by the way, covered up, some of them allegedly, by the Smithsonian. Now, I think I heard you mention Smithsonian when you were
Yes, I
talking
did.
about that. Of course you mentioned the Smithsonian. They're the number one organization of cover-ups, in my opinion.
Which
This
is
is
so
for
interesting that they actually published that as well and showed you that. That's what I'm saying. They
Mhm.
usually, don't necessarily. They have some cool stuff there, like crazy, ancient animals. But like you said, they definitely have some things that are, potentially questionable about how they have handled some things. And well, that makes me, like you just said, I believe, and I don't deal with hundreds, so I'm going to go 98% that everything you just stated, yes, royalty and all that, boom, that is all spot on. That they all are definitely there and here from that reason. I, again, 98% think that this has something to do with missing people and why we're not finding them, because they're being pulled back to the caves and hyenas eat everything, and a lot of the times the bones. And this area that they found in Saudi Arabia was by mistake, and they actually burrowed through it when they were looking for another area. So technically, they really shouldn't have found it, and they wouldn't even have known about this, which is super interesting. But then I do think that the cave systems and cave hyenas, that right there just tells me, man, the caves have something to do with this so much. I mean, I do know caves go all the way around, but as far-fetched as some people logically would think, it's really not that far-fetched to say those hyenas could have just been coming up from Africa back and forth and feeding and chilling all up in those caves. And then same thing with all the way around here in the United States. You have the cave hyenas, again, just chilling all up in the caves, consuming people. So they could be grabbing people in California, and then maybe, who knows, they're eating them in their burrow, somewhere underneath Texas or something. So yeah, of course you're not going to find them in California because they decided to, bring them back to the area. I mean, wolves have a 333 to 350 mile radius. They usually bring stuff back around 33 miles to their den. So that's, again, like I try to tell people when they're like, oh, there's no wolves in Kentucky and Tennessee. Well, yeah, sure there is. There's no reason, like the fact I just stated, that a timber wolf or gray wolf doesn't come down from Michigan in that area trying to just stoke and check its area. I mean, there's no magical lines that keep animals out. Same thing, I'm in Maine. Well, up in Canada above us, there's giant grizzly bears. No reason why in northern Maine a grizzly bear wouldn't come down to that area. Same thing in California. Grizzly bears were there for what? Since the beginning of their evolution, basically, and now all of a sudden they don't walk back into California. They just stay in Canada with this magic line. Doesn't make sense. I mean, they just found 8 jaguars in Arizona, that have come up from South America. I mean, they used to live there though. So the cycle of an animal, you need to reclaim what's yours eventually. It's just the way it is. If your species was there at one point in time, it has no problem adapting again, like when they reintroduce wolves into Yellowstone and stuff. So
Yes, absolutely. You know what? Well, as you're saying that, I started thinking about the were hyenas too. Those are really prevalent in African folklore.
I love how
And
you said that. I was gonna say that. You read my mind. I was gonna tell you that. You
yeah,
already know though. So
yeah. It's just a thought that popped in my head. The were hyenas, it's really prevalent, especially in, I believe it's Somalia. But of course, that has to do with black magic and whatnot. But that very well could be going on in the United States as well. Uh, you know, where
I love that
hyenas.
you
That
said
could be
that.
what we're seeing with these hyena dogmen that people are reporting. It could have something to do with being a were hyena.
In Ethiopia too, they say that. So again, before I toss you the mic here, there's two different versions, and the Boda is what I believe what they is how they pronunciate it in Ethiopia. So you can either become like you were saying, it sounds like the were hyena, something to do with being a blacksmith, and you have done something in your family, and it's kind of passed down every couple of generations where you're more susceptible, and you have to use like a magic stick. They don't really tell you what you rub on it and such, and then you use a special ash and say some sort of chants. But then there's one that literally sounds like the cynocephaly and such, that they wear baggy clothing and such, and they stay on the outskirts of town, and they also the outskirts of the forest, and they act like they need help, or come trade with me or something, or lead you off. And it's actually, I think they're cynocephaly in, yeah, hyena form, just taking these people and eating them. Because if you look back in the cynocephaly lore, there's a couple different versions. You have ones that have more of the human type bodies, but there's also the ones that have the full canine ones, and they also have jackal heads, dog heads, wolves heads, hyena heads. So yes, I love how you had just said that, because that's something I wanted to mention to you, because you have the were hyena, which is like the blacksmith version, but then you have the one that they say is an actual dang hominoid hyena that like lives all around the caves and steals their people as well. It sounds like the cynocephaly. So
Oh yeah. Oh, there's all different types of were hyenas, and there's also something in Africa called the kishi, and that's something that I have done. I did a show on that a long time ago. I can't remember the details of it. I just know that it is a trickster that is it looks like a man. It's almost like a shapeshifter who is it's usually a man, and he has women who like fall in love with him. He's like a Romeo character, okay, like a Rico Suave type of a dude, and he goes and really I forgot, I can't think of the word for it, what the term is, but he goes and woos women basically, and as he's going in. I was gonna say for the, well, I can't say, okay, but he's wooing these women, and right when he goes in for the kiss, uh, his face changes, and so he's actually got a dog's head, like a hyena's head, on the
mm.
back of his head. It's like a hyena's face on the back of his head, and his head kind of switches around, and the hyena will
Oh,
attack the woman, and it's very vampiric, and eats and basically eats the woman, whoever that she becomes his prey, and then after the beast eats her, he turns back into a man again. The hyena head hides underneath his dreadlocks. He usually has long hair, like long dreadlocks on his head. So
wow.
that is actually in folklore as well. I just thought I'd point that out too, because it's kind of like, it is a dog man, I guess. It's a human with
Yeah,
a hyena on the back of his head. Yeah.
that's so cool right there. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So much interesting stuff. And I'm going to throw you the mic back because you have some even more interesting stuff.
I was just looking over some of the information about these were hyenas, and you were right. In Somalia, actually, the were hyena, it's got a name, and it's called the Kori Ismaris, and that stands for one who rubs himself with a stick. I wanted to explain that because it says that a human who transforms into a hyena man by rubbing himself with a magic stick at night, and by rubbing himself again with this magic stick, he turns back into a human before the sun comes up. So it's like from dusk till dawn, he's a hyena man. In Ethiopia, you mentioned the blacksmith. Now, this is actually more of a hereditary condition
Mm-hmm.
passed down from generation to generation, where they come from a lineage of witches and wizards. and they are able to shapeshift into a hyena. Okay, so that would be very much like what we would consider to be like a werewolf, except for in a hyena form. And so, and they talk about that also being from midnight until sunup. Okay, so that is a very dangerous time to be out in Africa. Okay,
I mean, you got the
uh,
hyenas, the lions, all the big boys and girls. Oh yeah, for sure.
yeah. And let's see, in Sudan, they actually, I don't know the name of it, but they're a hybrid creature, and it's another were hyena, but they say that they're cannibalistic monsters that terrorize people, especially lovers. Okay, now I did mention the Kishi. Now this could be similar to the Kishi too, because I did mention that it's they go after their women lovers, right? It's a man who will woo a woman, and then as he gets her in his clutches, and they are in a warm embrace, let's just say, uh, the hyena head flips around and he eats her. Okay, so hyena's face that is hiding in the on the back of his head underneath all of his dreadlocks. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, in all these cases, they're very vampiric and they're going for the blood, which is often the case with a lot of these cryptids that we talk about here in the United States and all over the world.
So creepy right there. I mean, also too, even on a scientific level, I mean, as messed up as people would think, blood's got nutrients. So yes, to people, sure, that's considered taboo or something, but an animal again doesn't, saying they're animals. I'm just using that as an example. They don't have that terminology of, oh, that's inhumane. Like, I mean, any animal, like for example, there used to be a stray cat that'd come around here, and if there was like, I don't really eat the most steak, but if there was a steak and there's some of that leftover blood before something, I mean, she would love lapping that up. And any animal drinks or laps up the blood. I can't remember what large cat it is, but I think it might be cougars or something. Specifically, like to start with that. So yeah.
Oh yeah, big cats, they love blood. They like milk too. Okay, all cats like milk, cream. But they'll eat
Yes.
blood too. Okay. I mean, most of us, if you've ever had a cat, especially if your cat is an outdoor cat or goes and spends part time outside, they will bring you gifts. Okay, they are inherently hunters. They are savage hunters, and we actually have a cat that lives next door. We have two cats that live. They're kind of the neighborhood cats. One of them, it it goes after all the birds. Like it'll hunt down, it'll find birds' nests, and we'll watch it, and it kind of gets some of the neighbors upset because it will hunt anything. I mean, the chipmunks have all disappeared. Okay, like any kind of animal this cat can go after, and it doesn't eat it. It doesn't do it to eat it. It does it for the hunt, for the sport of it. And we watch it. It'll even go after little baby birds and nests and stuff. It's really crazy. It's pretty sadistic, actually. That cat is wild. That's just how cats are.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that it's funny how you said that because actually house cats are, out of all predators in the world, are actually the most, like you said, heartless. They don't, necessarily
They have to
consume
play with
anything. They're just for the thrill of it, which is messed up for
Yeah,
sure.
they'll play with it too. Like they'll hunt it down and then they'll play with it until it. I'm not trying to get gross and
Oh, of
it is
course,
kind
it's
of
just
terrible,
facts,
but
though. It's
they play
facts.
with it a little bit
Yeah,
before they
it's
eat it.
100% facts.
Yeah.
It's on
Yeah.
a video actually, again, to make you laugh before you tell us some great stuff that you've been up to, of a house cat that, well, decided to, again, be the predator that it is, or meant to be, or thinks it is, and it's all crouched down behind this deer, like it's gonna try to pounce on it. And this deer is just like, yo, bro, what are you doing? Like, you're literally like the size of nothing. And it's like the natural instinct for a second where that cat just all of a sudden thought it was a mountain lion again or something.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's why it's so dangerous to be out in the woods, especially late at night. I've always been taught to look up into the trees at night, and
Mhm.
when we're out there doing our Bigfoot research, because we do have a lot of cats, even though we're told there are not a lot of mountain lions and stuff where we go. That's not always the case. It's not always true. There are cats out there, especially all over the South. There are mountain lions, pumas, panthers, and
Mhm.
down in Texas, you had mentioned. I think you had mentioned Texas, but out west, down in Southwest, they have
Yeah,
jaguardis. I think that's how
Arizona,
you say
8 of
it.
them. Yeah,
Mhm.
just recently. So I mean,
Jaguars, yeah, jaguars, jaguardis or jaguandis. I don't remember how you pronounce that. But there's all sorts of cats that aren't. They may not be gigantic cats, but there's big cats. They're relatively big. I mean, and you gotta be real careful because what these cats will do is they will stalk you. They'll jump from tree to tree and they will pounce on you from above, and you'll never know what hit. And they go for the neck. So you got to be really careful about that. The cats, yeah, the cats are dangerous. They, I think that a lot of the attacks where people believe that people have been unalived by dogmen, I think a lot of those are cat attacks.
I agree too, 100%. And it's some great stuff you just touched on as we start to tie this up here in a little bit. That large cats, for example, are yeah, straight up dominant, and people don't realize that whether they like to think the lion's the king of the jungle, he's really not. I mean, the lionesses are more badass than he is. Okay, so the Siberian tiger is actually considered the most dominant cat in the world. I mean, they don't back down to grizzly bears, and there's actually some records of them deceasing and beating the crap out of grizzly bears. But besides them, people don't realize that the jaguars are actually the next most dominant scary cat. They are a more badass version than a leopard. So, yeah, that's pretty scary actually. That 8 or 9 of them were spotted, because I mean it's bad enough dealing with a mountain lion, but honestly, a mountain lion is more or less like a glass cannon, meaning they're a whole lot of offense, but they're pretty brittle. I've seen really low caliber weapons and honestly injuries that you wouldn't have really expected to either disable them or unalive them. They're kind of like cheetahs, if that makes sense. I mean, cheetahs are obviously a good predator and stuff, but they can't really seem to take a beating. Whereas when you watch like the hyenas, for example, I don't know how many times I've seen them in pretty crazy brawls with lions and stuff, and the lion's literally got the hyena by its neck. Then he or she squad shows up, lion drops he or she, and then that one's right back up in the fight. Whereas, like I said, I've seen something that didn't look like too big of a scuffle between like a lion and a cheetah, where the lion just seems to like break its leg like with ease.
Yes, and you gotta really be careful. Like I said, they go for your neck. Okay, they go for the neck, and they'll crush your skull with their jaws too. So um, which is actually, if you're going to be attacked by one of these things, at least it'll be over quick. Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds terrible. It sounds terrible, but hopefully it'll be over quick if something were to get you like that. Unfortunately, I believe that a big cat is what uh, attacked Brenda Hamilton in North Carolina. I do that thing called remote viewing, and that was given to me as one of those blind targets. And what I was seeing when I was remote viewing this thing, it appeared to be a big cat that jumped down from a tree and attacked her. So that's what I think that attacked her. I just think that and even there was a bow hunter out of Texas a while back, several years ago, that it was attacked, and some people had claimed they assumed it was probably a dogman. That was given to me as a blind remote viewing target as well. I do believe that was a big cat with him as well. I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he was attacked from behind. Something came from above, I believe, and it attacked him on the back of his neck as well. So yeah, they're a pretty good threat out there, and so just keep your head on a swivel and always look up when you guys are out in the woods.
Yeah, that's some pretty gnarly stuff. And I believe you and I have touched base on it before about how Jody, as well as I'm starting to think that too, that if the LBL really did happen, that quote unquote massacre, that it could have been some sort of large black jaguar or something as well, to be quite honest with you.
There's so many different dogmen spotted out there, so many, and I've had at least 2 or 3 people on my shows that have had firsthand experience with dogmen out there. So honestly, cryptid warfare operators, we've got a trip. We haven't solidified it yet, but we're planning on going up to the LBL soon at some point, and we're going to go find out for ourselves. We're going to go look for dogman up there. So
Yeah,
whenever we have that trip, we'll let you know. We'll let you know what
that's
we find.
great stuff. Well, make sure
Yeah.
you're loaded up for sure. And actually, You know how people always want nightmare fuel, right? And I'm always, stating how everyone just seems to like the fake things in life, the clickbait and all that. Well, as we're wrapping this up, here's some real life nightmare fuel. Because, like you were saying, if you are going to be consumed by a predator, well, you would really hope in hopefully the universe would bestow you with this, that it'd be something that would, yes, suffocate you first. But unfortunately, for some people out there, there are actually documented cases. And oh, geez, crow. I listened to this one woman, and she is extremely disfigured now, of course, but she is still alive, and that is awesome and seems to be at peace with what occurred. Well, bears, unfortunately, do not think of kindness or anything like that, and they will start eating you alive. Lions, well, they do a lot of that too, and so do hyenas. Lions will have one around the neck, but like you said, usually the rest of them don't wait. So they just start consuming you, which is totally messed up. I mean, usually an anaconda squeezes you at first or something, whatever. Have some courtesy, right? At least the vultures wait for you to be deceased. Yeah. And for the most part, these bears aren't about that. So the people were out looking for these hikers and such because one had told them, and they were badly attacked about what had occurred to their friend, and they were out looking, and they ended up finding this large bear, had to unalive it, found its cache, I believe it's called. And as they were digging it up because they feared the remains of, the woman were going to be in there they were looking for, well, they saw her hands moving still, and they pulled her out, and a large portion of her face and certain parts of the large muscles in her body had been consumed, but she then was buried there for this bear to come back and consume later. So like I said, she survived and things, but people want to, hear some real nightmare fuel. And there it is right there. When you are out in nature, nature doesn't care, okay? Throughout the evolutionary process of Earth, that's the way it is. If you are out there in nature, you're on the menu. So whether you're Homo sapiens like us, Homo erectus, Neanderthals, Denisovians, doesn't matter. I mean, yeah, sure. Now we like to think that because we live in areas and we're smarter and we use technology that we are immune to this, but we're not. I mean, when we go out in nature, whether we're smart or not, the bear hasn't changed its thought process on the fact that we're food. Okay. It was in the past and it still does now. So I just, kind of wanted to share that with you before we tie this up.
Humans are not the top of the food chain, and any kind of cryptid field researcher or even a hunter that's out there will tell you we're not the top of the food chain out there, and it's a humbling experience being around an animal that is so massive and gigantic. Even cryptids, a Bigfoot. When you run into something that's not supposed to exist, and this thing is way bigger than you, and you know that it could probably eat you if it wanted to. So, like I said, it's a very humbling experience. So, yeah,
Right?
don't live in fear. Okay, don't live in fear. Just be prepared for stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that's why, my teams do go out. We do protect ourselves because there are things out there that will eat us.
Is that not the truth? And to my audience, well, guess what? We do need to close the book for the night with the Midnight Society. But one more thing I will leave everybody with, another little tidbit of nightmare fuel involving a bear again. I do not know if somebody hunted this or had to unalive it, but I do know that when they were looking at this massive bear, in its back, it had something that was strange. And as they looked forward and leaned down, they realized it was a large knife that had basically healed into this bone and muscle all around it. And the only way that could have got there is, well, like they said, unfortunately, male or female, somebody didn't have a strong enough weapon to defend themselves and ended up in this animal's mouth. And that was pretty much their last ditch effort, but it did nothing. So,
Oh, that sucks. That sucks. Oh man. Yeah, you
but
hate
it
hearing stuff
again
like that.
shows you, like you said, the predator, though, just how dominant they really are. I mean, that's just a bear. I mean, I shouldn't say just a bear, but I mean, if we are talking now about something like a Sasquatch or a Dogman, I mean, yeah, if a bear is taking, plenty of damage like that, like you said, you got to make sure you got the firepower. So,
Yeah, a knife is going to be like a toothpick, okay, when you're fighting a grizzly bear. So, yeah,
Yes.
go prepared. Just know your environment, know what your threats are going to be, know what animals are, what are in that region. Just know what you're going to be up against potentially. Prepare for the worst, and pray for the best. Okay, but prepare for the worst just in case something were to happen. Never go out in the woods alone. Always make sure nobody knows. I mean, nobody. Make sure somebody knows where you're going. Give them the coordinates to where you're going. And like I said, don't ever go out in the woods by yourself if you can help it. And always watch your back.
Preach, my friend. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight and linking back up. I do look forward to getting you back on here consistently bi-weekly. Is going to be great. But obviously, well, to my audience, I get to speak to Jessica all the time. So yeah, special treatment, right? No, I'm just kidding. But you guys will hear from her very soon again. So thank you for hanging out with us, my friend.
Oh, it's always a good time. Thanks for having me.
If you did make it this far tonight, you truly are a legend. And I do appreciate all the support. If you could like, subscribe, comment, and share the information, I do drastically appreciate it. Until next time, remember, there are things worse than myself that go bump in the night.